Hello and welcome. This is Out Motorsports. My name is Jake and this is the 2021 Kia Seltos SX Turbo. This is the highest trim level of Kia's newest crossover. This is one that slots between the current Soul and Sportage in both size and the overall lineup. Now Kia says that this crossover brings a whole lot of style and technology to a space that is already crowded with, frankly, a lot of both. Now the SX Turbo has a turbocharged 4-cylinder engine, dual clutch automatic transmission, and a somewhat advanced off-road system given what other competitors in this space offer. So let's take a look at this Kia Seltos SX Turbo and see how it stacks up for those of us in the enthusiast space who might be looking for a crossover of this size. And of course, before we get started, two quick things. If you like what we're doing and like this video, please do take a second and subscribe to our channel. We do really appreciate that. You can also give us a follow on Facebook and Instagram. Second, if you like the shirt that I'm wearing, these are available for sale on our website, outmotorsports.com, and I will link to those in the description below. Now with that, on to the Seltos. Like I said, the Seltos is the brand's latest offering, and part of what they're going for here is style. Now, everyone I talked to almost universally loved the style of this crossover, and I will say it's very interesting all over. I do really like the color. This is called Star Bright Yellow, and it's one of several really good colors that Kia offers. They have a good orange, a couple blues, and it's just nice to have something that's a little different in the segment. Really bright poppy colors I think work on anything, but frankly they tend to work better on smaller vehicles, and something like this Seltos is ripe for bright colors. So props to Kia. Even if you don't love this yellow, like I said, there are plenty other great options. Now with this Star Bright Yellow paint, my test vehicle does have the optional two-tone roof. I do really like the color combination, although unfortunately if you pick the two-tone roof, you cannot get a power sunroof. I would love the sunroof just given who I am. I like convertibles, I like open air, but the two-tone roof is also a really sharp option, so if you're going for that, just be aware you can't get that sunroof. Now otherwise, this Seltos SX Turbo is fully loaded. This is as loaded as you'll get one minus the sunroof, and it comes in with an MSRP right around $29,500. It's a lot of car with a lot of feature content for, frankly, not a lot of money. And I do think that a lot of car applies to those of us who consider ourselves enthusiasts. So let's pop under the hood and see what makes this SX Turbo so interesting compared to many other crossovers in the segment. So under the hood of this Seltos SX Turbo, this is a 1.6 liter turbocharged 4-cylinder that makes 175 horsepower at 6,000 RPM. Kia is leading with their torque figure here, and that is 195 pound-feet, and it's available at just 1,500 RPM. And that is paired to a 7-speed dual clutch automatic transmission, which is a very nice nod to the enthusiasts among us. Those are known for being quick shifting, quick to respond, and add a little bit of fun to the driving experience, where a CVT might actually sap some of that fun away. Now the SX Turbo does pair this power and torque and 7-speed DCT to a standard all-wheel drive system. Again, not super interesting. All-wheel drive has been sold to the masses as something that we all need, and thus it comes on every new car. But the all-wheel drive in this Seltos SX Turbo has a button inside that will lock the torque split 50-50 front and rear. It's a really nice touch that's gone by the wayside for a lot of fully automatic systems, and I do like the fact that Kia lets you say, hey, this is a situation where I want to preemptively set up the drivetrain in this way, and I know better than the computer might. Now the all-wheel drive is permanently engaged. Just if you don't have that lock button engaged, it will be a variable torque split front to rear. The other item worth noting with the all-wheel drive system in this Seltos SX Turbo is that it has a form of hill descent control, so it will help you get down a hill without using a whole lot of the brake pedal or the throttle. It will kind of walk itself down a little decline. Now, none of this is going to be super impressive for the folks looking to, say, take this car to Moab, but for those who are looking for an all-wheel drive system with a little bit more control and a little bit more technology than the average subcompact crossover can offer, this is certainly interesting and worth checking out. And with all-wheel drive does come the discussion about ground clearance. The Seltos has 7.3 inches of ground clearance. So not a ton, but certainly not bad, and I do really appreciate the fact that Kia offers some of these levels of control versus just saying, oh, it's all fully automatic. And so with all that, let's go ahead and close the hood and go for a quick drive and see how the Seltos SX Turbo is in the real world on the road. All right, so driving the 2021 Kia Seltos SX Turbo all-wheel drive. Like I said, this is a 1.6 liter 4, making 175 horsepower at 6,000 RPM. That is peak horsepower almost at redline. The redline is indicated at 6,500, but Kia, like some other automakers, is leading with torque first. Frankly, that's what people tend to drive most of the time, especially in an urban environment, which is probably where a smaller car like this is going to be used more often than not. And this 1.6 puts out 195 pound-feet at just 1,500 RPM, so just above idle. And like I said, it's paired to a 7-speed dual-clutch automatic. So this is an interesting powertrain combination. It seems like a lot of manufacturers are split evenly between a continuously variable transmission, a traditional torque converter automatic, and a dual clutch automatic. And I don't know if one is necessarily better than the other two, but I will say dual clutch transmissions, especially those in more economy-minded vehicles, tend to feel a little goofy around town. Now this one is fairly well executed, but the dual clutch compared to a torque converter can feel a little strange unless you're able to really give it the beans like down an on-ramp. When you do that, now, this is one of those vehicles that I think is certainly more than adequate. It's quick enough. It's definitely not fast. I think you would need a little more power to make it fast per se, but it does feel very fine. The only complaint that I had with power was pulling out to pass on a 2-lane road. I took the Seltos on a road trip, and when you're going 55, pulling out to pass a slower vehicle, you put your foot down. That 175 horsepower with 1 or 2 people in the car is just not quite enough to make it feel quick for passing maneuvers. The interesting thing is that when the transmission upshifted and the engine fell back into its torque band, then it felt quick and you got this kind of surge forward of acceleration. So just interesting for those manufacturers who are leading with torque over horsepower, because horsepower tends to come into play the faster you go and the higher you rev the engine. So just an interesting observation. I think most people will probably find the power in the Seltos to be more than adequate. Now, like I said, the dual clutch can be a little goofy around town. Once you're on the move, it's totally fine. I do find it strange with a dual clutch that there's no paddle shifters in this car. You can control the transmission manually using the shifter in the center console. You can put it in sport mode for a little enhanced response, or you can shift it with a plus-minus sort of thing. It listens fine, it's quick enough, but I didn't find the shifting to be super quick, which is kind of the point of a dual clutch. There's a little bit of a lag, especially around town between gears. You feel it shift, but when you're taking off from a stop, the transmission does engage first gear very quickly, unlike some other dual clutches I've driven recently, so that was a nice little perk. The only thing that felt a little strange to me was moving around town, trying to hold a steady but slow speed. You can feel the clutches grabbing and disengaging off and on to let you hold that very low speed. And I'm sure it's fine, just feels a little strange compared to what a torque converter would do, and torque converters are known for their smoothness above all else. But I do really like the drivetrain combination here. I think it's perky, it's peppy, and it's fine for most people unless you're expecting this thing to win a bunch of drag races, in which case you'll need to add a little more power to it. Now, the final piece of the drivetrain, like I mentioned, is the all-wheel drive system. You can lock it to a 50-50 torque split using a button down here in the center console, or you can leave it in its full automatic mode. And this is a front-biased all-wheel drive system because the Seltos can be had at its most basic trim in front-wheel drive. Now, I was able to take the Seltos off-roading in the lightest of senses, but probably similar to how most buyers would. I went through a new construction neighborhood where there were a bunch of trees cleared and nothing built yet, a lot of rutted dirt paths and places where you can explore that you would need a little ground clearance, need some decent approach and departure angles, and a solid all-wheel drive system. There was some dry dirt and some more wet mud going on, and really, in all cases, the all-wheel drive worked perfectly fine. I tried it both in full automatic mode and in the locked 50-50 mode. I tried to push the system a little bit. I came to stops in wet mud, up a hill, tried to get a wheel off the ground or get the suspension flexing a little bit, and truthfully it did work pretty well. So that was very impressive given what this vehicle is. Like I said, it's not a Wrangler, it never will be a Wrangler, but for most buyers I think this all-wheel drive system is probably a cut above what they're going to expect. The other thing that I was able to try was this hill descent control, which will let you go down a hill without riding the brakes or controlling the throttle too much. So definitely a nice feature. It did work well going down some of those slippery dirt hills, and again, certainly a nice to have. Like I said, Kia is trying to be very technology forward with this Seltos in this segment. You do have a typical suite of driver assistance technology, so you've got the adaptive cruise control, the lane keep assist, lane departure warning, blind spot monitoring, rear cross traffic, all these things that are kind of standard across a lot of makes and models at this point. And Kia, like its sister Hyundai on the Venue that I tested recently, also has the drive away alert, where if you're at a stoplight, the car in front of you leaves and you don't, it will chime and put a little note on the cluster reminding you, hey, the car left. So just a great little touch, and I think that's something that a lot of cars ought to have at this point, given everyone seems to be distracted by their phones while they're driving. Now, I'm sure this will come across as a very glowing review of the Seltos, about as bright as the yellow paint on the exterior, and frankly, I did like it quite a bit. It's really endeared itself to me over the last 7 days, but there are a couple things that stood out as downsides, and they're definitely worth mentioning. 2 of the 3 are all about the air conditioning in here. I did have this vehicle during a fairly warm spell within the DC metro area, and one thing that I noticed is that the air conditioning in this Seltos is not the best at getting the vehicle cooled down really quickly after it's been sitting out in the sun all day. That was a big disappointment, because compared to a lot of vehicles, they can cool the car down much quicker than this air conditioning system. Granted, this is a smaller car, the whole system is probably sized for the vehicle, but you know, at one point I had 3 passengers in here and the car had been sitting outside all day, and it took quite a while to get the air blowing cold enough to really make us feel comfortable. The other thing I noticed is related to the automatic climate control and the remote start on the Seltos. There were a couple instances where I had the climate control turned off because I was driving with the windows down when I last drove the Seltos. I parked it, put the windows up, came back the next morning, and the climate control had been switched off before I left the car. I then used the remote start the next morning to start the Seltos, thinking, oh, it'll turn on the air conditioning, I'll come out to a nice cool car for me and my passengers. Turns out, if you have the climate control turned off when you turn off the car, the remote start will not turn it back on when you start the vehicle. And the final piece that I found a little disappointing with the Seltos was just the general noise in the cabin at highway speed. No one is expecting this car to be a luxury car. It's a Kia. They are very nice cars, but they are certainly not a luxury brand. But you get a lot of wind noise, road noise, tire noise when you get up to highway speed, and it's not something that will stand out at first, but over the course of a longer drive, it may start to grate on you. So just something to think about if you're looking at one of these. It could just be a factor of the tires that are on the vehicle in here, but there's also consideration of just general insulation and wind and road noise coming in besides what you get from the tires. And so even with those couple of downsides to the Seltos, I do really find this to be a charming, cheap and cheerful vehicle. It really embodies that phrase to me. It's got the personality, it's got the paint colors, it's got enough power to be kind of spunky. It's certainly not going to be a standout for the sake of power, but it does stand out where it matters, and that is technology and design and overall feature content for the price, and it is certainly not slow. All right, and that is the 2021 Kia Seltos SX Turbo with all-wheel drive. Thanks so much for coming along today. As always, if you like this video and like what we're up to, please take a second to subscribe to the channel, like the video, give us a follow on Facebook and Instagram, and keep your eye out for a full written review of the Seltos SX Turbo on outmotorsports.com. Until next time, thanks for coming along, and we'll see you soon.